The myth of modern racism amongst men abstract addendum. The reality is that men see all other men naturally as the opposition. This is a biological evolutionary adaptation for survival and reproductive success. Haldane, 1974, and amongst all mammals, Lebeouf, 1974. Men are taught to see everything as a racial issue rather than just healthy competition. In the 21st century, male children are not allowed to play contact sports in school, and participate in competition in its purest form is discouraged. We see this in the decrease in exams, for essays, and participation medals, which favors female psychology, and removes any incentive for school-age males to achieve, to do their best, or continue to higher learning where they would learn that kinship and competition is hereditary, and racism is not. Meaning school is where boys go to learn racism, not healthy competition. Making the greatest disadvantage for boys to attend is the education system, Summers CH, 2001. By doing this, healthy attitudes towards competition, like grace in defeat and respectful winner, are not cultivated, such as the shaking of hands after contest. This is why men misunderstand the origin of the adversarial positions they are forced into by biology, and end up believing anything that they're told without question. Weck, 1973. The repercussions of defective education is that, when boys are looking for explanations about their adversarial nature, they're not told it is healthy competition, but it is racism or toxic masculinity, even before they know what in-group bias and racism is. Hodkinson, 2007. Though racism exists, it is on an individualistic measure, not a demographic. All men are a singular individual in-group consisting of one person by their identity, which is often based upon their perception of their achievements and their utility. Akerlof, 2000. Campbell, 1984, and Across Cultures Dobbins, 1991. Then an identity outside the in-group, just by the position of competition amongst men, which has nothing to do with racism or in-group bias, because of its individual singular nature, is male-on-male sexism, and that has more to do with biology and evolution than personal preference. Geary, 1998. Whether you have a creationist or a purely evolution-based belief system, you cannot find fault of the reason men see other men as a potential adversaries. Therefore it is sexism, not racism, that motivates an individualistic, group or personal protection bias. Men are the main source of misandry. If you as a man find yourself having a compulsion to be angry at or want to rebel against somebody of a different ethnic background, it is likely because they are men, not because they are of a particular race. This is demonstrated in African cultural conflict, where it is a different tribe, not a different race, which invokes conflict. El Badawi, 2000. Usually when it becomes a racial issue for men, is when it was taught to them from a young age. Otherwise it is always rationally based threat, or it is a bioevolutionary reproductive issue. Usually racism stems from paternity reassurance and cultural eradication. Fiaran, 2003. Patterns outlined in a number of studies show that ethnic conflict in communities does not tend to exist until the ratio of unassimilated ethnic groups become high enough to threaten another. Reynal Quirol, 2002. Indicating that it is a genuine cultural concern, not an open or instinctive response to be racist. University of Nottingham, Bleaney, 2009. When one ethnic group becomes threatened by another ethnic group, it is normally then that racism is recorded in any significant level, according to real qualitative and quantitative research. Garcia Montalvo, 2004. So I call any researches that have claimed a significant result about racism frauds, liars, charlatans and intentionally academically dishonest. The social science of social justice, SJWs, that has the assertion that everybody is racist, race caption implicit association test, the IAT, has been proven to be pure fabrication by cognitive chronometry. The fact that people stop to think about race before they answer a question means they are mindful of their answers, overly empathetic, and are trying to adjust for racial bias, something that doesn't exist. In accordance with cognitive chronometry, by their own metric, a score of over 0.5 is not racism, it's anxiety or non-existent. Greenwald, 2003. 0.41 milliseconds is the time it takes someone to be surprised. 6 to 8 milliseconds for complex cognition. Meyer, 1988. Hilliard, 1983. Even across organisms. Bechtel, 2014. Demonstrating that it takes longer to think about something that does not exist than something that does, according to deception detection techniques and study. Posner, 2002. A study, Poperock, 2015, administered two different versions of the IAT. In one version, the in-group was French-Ami and the out-group was North African. Using this version, they found an IAT effect. In second, the two categories were French and North African and me. In this version, the effect completely disappeared, suggesting that the IAT crucial factor was friendship, kinship or membership, not nationality or race that caused inconsistency. To illustrate this phenomenon, an example goes like this: black French man equals friend, white Moroccan man equals foe. If Morocco man was associated with me, he becomes friend, no racial bias present. So you literally have to be psychiatrically disturbed to believe that the IAT effect is even remotely associated with race or even nationality. SJW enforcement of racism false demonstrators is inhumane and a human rights violation through torture of negative reinforcement on the innocent or unaware individual. Payne, 2014. This is teaching children and adults to be racist, or believe they are, through repetition of false positives. They are actually creating racism, not preventing it. Abramson, 1978. Example: my first friend was Aboriginal. I didn't know that he was any different from me. I only saw a boy my age until an adult informed me, which confused me rather than inform me, which is the exact system being pushed by SJW's Tatum, 1992. Teaching children that they're different is to cultivate racism, not the solution to it. Myers-Lipton, 1996. Cognitive failures, negative reinforcement, and pointing out differences leads to learned helplessness, a condition whereby an organism gives up hope of being able to do things that are within their power and instead submit to learned patterns. Example: I am racist, I can't help it, so I will be racist, or hate myself, to self-decrement. Abramson, 1978. Such as the Clark or white male phenomenon, where they will believe and accept anything detrimental to their true character by impulse rather than acknowledgement or reality. Hiroto, 1975. Meyer, 1976. This is also demonstrated in men's compulsion to simp or virtue signal. Hiroto, 1975. Leading children and men with the compulsion to virtue signal and white knight to combat a false perception of self and a negative reinforced false guilt. Cassin, 1996. To be told you're different at a young age is to cultivate racism and structural violence against children, especially male ones. Summers, CH, 2001. Which should be considered structural violence. Galtung, 1971, a crime against humanity. Farmer, 2004, cruel and unusual psychological punishment. Farmer, 1996, and in America a violation of the 8th Amendment, especially when children are subjected to it. Lutz, 1999. Conclusion: it is extremely important for academics to understand that the push or justification for creating gender studies academic positions for women is forming hate culture within the education system. To create these academic positions has led to the fabrication of evidence through academic dishonesty and outright fabrication. This cult mentality discounts sexism and racism from subsets of society just to demonize others, which is not only academically dishonest and delusional, but a violation of inalienable human rights and a dereliction of duty of governments to provide human security. Hamola, 2015, a UN signatory. Racism amongst men is far less prevalent than what we are led to believe. That normal competition-based instinct are often misinterpreted under the hegemony of liberal regressive education as a confirmation bias, the racism to push a delusional narrative. That it intentionally targets men for normal biological and healthy competition, and twists it, with confirmation bias or outright dishonesty, into fictional racism and inhumane negative reinforcement. This has most likely led to the white male or white guilt phenomena in the wake of the fraudulent and defective IAT social justice cult. That this is created by a false assumption on a sociology cognitive chronometer experiment that is deeply flawed and is likely to be intentionally biased in light of other research. Due to the fact that racial conflict only starts to become a prominent problem when racial groups have UN assimilating groups with incompatible beliefs and behaviors that threaten the existing culture, when it expands beyond 17 to 30% of said society, due to the protective instinct and evolutionary reproductive success instinct or framework. Finally, the teaching curriculum to prevent racism is most likely the cause, and their programs of negative reinforcement cultivates racism through mechanisms such as learned belief framework and learned helplessness against an illusionary enemy of self. Racial education in light of research and simple methodological logic does more damage to society and more than likely encourage racism rather than reduce it. This education framework is more likely to create dysfunctional or psychologically damaged men or incite resentment and anger within groups that are subjected to this injustice.